Good morning. Sorry, I'm a little late on my post this week. We've been dealing with a lot of sickness in this house. And also you can probably hear my kids talking in the background. So in the video, you talked a lot about assumptions, implications, and point of view, which, I kept looking back on my artifact thread and thinking about, I think most obviously my point of view comes across pretty strong in it, um, both as a woman. Um, I think probably actually just heavily as a woman. Um, my point of view is swayed towards women's issues. But I think, I was also thinking about what assumptions I've made in my paper. I think some really obvious assumptions I've made are things like people understand, or like people implicitly understand that women have struggled throughout history. Um, I've also had to make assumptions, I think, about like the future of women, because I have my section on like technology. And as much as anything that's like kind of a rapidly growing industry or concept, we have to make assumptions about what the effects of those are. So I think I saw a lot of like assumptions in those parts of my artifact thread. And then he talks about implications, and at one point he says like assumptions, that's where you begin, and implications is where it takes you. And I think I apologize. Alexa, stop. Alexa, 5 minutes. Sorry. Um, but I think maybe this is where I struggled the most with my artifact thread. I don't even know if I struggled with it. I'm just trying to piece where my implications are. Like, I was thinking of it as like, because of this, like, I guess that's more consequences, but just thinking about um, if, I guess my implications, sorry, I'm like processing through it to a degree, but like, because I kept trying to think of what my implications are, and I guess at the base of it, my implications go back to what I say in my paper, which is like, if we don't recognize the way women have been treated or overlooked, then they're going to continue to be mistreated and overlooked. Um, and I guess on that basis, then the assumption is that that is what happens to women. That throughout history, women have been poorly acknowledged, and the implication is that it'll continue if we don't address it and we don't study it. So it's kind of mostly what I got out of the video. This chapter was actually really important and interesting to me because I took on position of operations director at my job 7 months ago, and we had a pretty toxic work environment previous to me getting this position. I had actually put in my 2 weeks notice because the person that had my job was so negative and toxic, and the work morale was low. She was very on the like, do as I say. Talking about like the power struggles and redefining those. Like reading all these lists of like, how do you deal with that? Anyway, in the beginning, it was all about just learning the job and getting it done when I got the position. And now the owner and I have been sitting down a lot and having meetings about what he wants and what I want out of the business. And a huge part of it is like about worker like equality, essentially. Like everybody has a hand in it. And like one of our big things is, because we print t-shirts, is if something comes across our, we get a job that maybe ethically somebody finds questionable, we have established this thing that's like, speak up and tell us, because if we don't want to print a t-shirt that has something on it that would make someone in our organization uncomfortable, which has been really important for us because we are trying to establish everybody's like word. Everybody has a voice, not just, I mean, like, I have my title, and I understand that, like, my title is there because I am, like, essentially like a bookkeeper. I'm organized. I do all of this stuff. And then, there's people that, like, are technically under me, but that's something we're really trying to move away from. Um, and so, like, reading a lot of this is like, I think one of them was, determining your definition of reality, what party lines or propaganda are generated on the job. Um, and this is something we're having, like, an all-staff meeting next week, and not those words verbatim, but that was, like, a question we had was, like, why? Why do we do this? And it just kind of kept making me think about, just this whole chapter really made me think about, like, this concept of power. How do you get everybody involved and still run a successful business? And how do you note, like, how do you recognize when there's people that are obviously struggling to have more power when you're trying to kind of alleviate that, if that makes sense. Anyway, I just think this was a really interesting chapter at this time in my life. Again, I apologize for all of this. It's been a rough week. Hope everyone else is feeling well.